Good morning, everyone. I hope you are well. Today's learning is dedicated in memory of Spritzi Gittor Bas David Savid Jacob and Shmuel Winstock, Devora Bas Label Goldstones, Willem Ben Zvi Elton, Jacob and Shmuel Winstock, Zvi Dov Ben Peretz Morris, Hannah Brind Bas Avram Fire, Pinchas Chai Ben Yehuda Cohen Sofiov, Gittor Bas Jacob Green. Wish all of them long life, as well as those that are saying Kaddish throughout the year. Leah Bas in memory of Leah Bas Fiver, Harav Yaakov Tzvi ben David Aryeh, Tzivia Bas Mordechai, Avram ben David Slavin, Shalom ben Yisrael Morris, Zipper Fegel Bas Rufen Baruch, Shalom ben Elili, ben Bas Fiver from Shoshana Bas Yaakov Shmuel, Kela Bela Bas Henach Yirmiyahu Chia ben Nechav and Moshe Eliezer, so Malka Bas ben Yomin. Wish everyone long life. So, before we come to the next of our gates, which is the gate of Lashon Hara, I wanted to speak to you a bit about just a brief idea that Rabbi Sachs enumerated, and that is the idea of consistency. He said as follows: consistency is the soil upon which creativity grows. In other words, what Rabbi Sachs, I believe, meant was that however creative, however innovative, however much the creative juices are flowing in every fiber of your being, that in itself is not going to be productive and is not going to bring you success. The way that you achieve success is when you are able to harness that inspiration and be able to harness that inspiration in order to be consistent day in, day out. The world is a symphony. A person is a symphony. And therefore, in order for all the parts and various elements to work inside a person and inside the world, there has to be that consistency day in, day out of our lives. And in fact, we find that it was that some of the greatest minds and most creative people that ever lived always had a very rigid routine to their daily lives. Take, for example, Beethoven, we've mentioned before. Beethoven, the great composer, that every day would get up at the same time and he would count out 60, not 61, not 59, 60 coffee beans before he was able to make his coffee. Then you have, for example, Tchaikovsky, who would every single day go for a 2-hour walk with pen and paper so that he would be able to refresh himself and his mind and be able to come back. And he was of the opinion that if he came back 1 minute too early or 1 minute too late, it was forewarned him of a disaster in terms of his creativity. So therefore we see, and there are many countless more examples of the importance of having that consistency, which is the bedrock for our creativity. So therefore consistency is not just when we are trying to be creative, but it's also relevant when we are trying to bring about real paradigm shifts in our lives. In other words, if we really are serious and want to become the people that we aspire to be, that we want to be left and remembered for, right? Therefore, we have to make changes, and that comes from consistency, consistency day in, day out. And therefore, perhaps one of the hardest virtues, one of the hardest character traits for us to be consistent in is when it comes to the power of speech and the gate of slander. We all speak and we say thousands and thousands of words. In fact, our sages tell us that every person has a limited number of words that they are capable of in their lifetime. So therefore, it's worth thinking, as we've said countless times, before we start to speak. But that having been said, we find as follows. Slander is speaking ill of one's neighbor, even though speaking the truth, even though one may be speaking the truth, but speaking falsely of him is referred to as motzi shemra. So let us now define these two concepts. Bear with me 1 second. And I'll give you a quick synopsis of some of the principles and laws relating to Lashon Hara, if the sheets have come out, which they have not. Okay, so it goes like this. The number one rule that many people are not aware of, and will say it again and again, is that Lashon Hara, speaking badly, slander, is even if it is true. In other words, even if what you are saying is true, that is not a justification to be able to make a statement about a third party that is derogatory. Okay? So where we get confused, and perhaps I can share with you, we find in English law that if I make a statement, God forbid, that is defamatory, then there is a defense to that. In other words, there is a license for a person to speak in a defamatory way about another person where it is considered justified, right? Justification in the eyes of the law is considered one of a handful of qualifications and legitimate reasons why a person would be able to get away with speaking defamatory about a person. That does not apply in Jewish law. It doesn't matter whether it's true. It doesn't matter whether it's not true. You are not allowed to speak in a defamatory way about another person. So if it's true, that person, has done X or is known to be Y, it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that gives you the right to spread things that are damaging to that person's character. We differentiated between on the one hand, the Lashon Hara, which is speaking badly about a person even if it is true. Bear with me 1 second. And on the other hand, we spoke about the idea of Motzi Shemra. Motzi Shemra is where it is slander. In other words, it is not something that is true. It is something that is completely false. People make up spurious stories about other people. I'll tell you a funny story. Well, it's funny for me to say it. It wasn't so funny for the rabbi in question. Imagine the following scenario. Everyone sitting we have to imagine because we haven't been to a simcha for a long time. But if we had to imagine that we're all sitting around a table, we're at table number 10, okay? Table number 10. And we're sitting around the table at a simcha, a wedding, and all of a sudden somebody starts to speak badly about another person, okay? Now, the only problem is that the person that he's speaking badly about, he hasn't seen all the name cards. And the person that he's speaking badly about is sitting at that table. In other words, the person that he's slandering is sitting at that table. But that's exactly what happened at a certain simcha. And they carry on speaking about this great rabbi. And all of a sudden, the host comes over. And the host hears the conversation that's going on, realizes that his guest is sitting there listening to Lashon Hara being spoken about himself. So he tries to find a way to hint to the other people to change the topic because, of course, they were slandering one of the other guests at the table. And, of course, not only that, but they were embarrassing themselves tremendously. So that's the way we really should think about it when we speak badly about people. What would that person think if they were sitting here in front of us? Would we still say it? Or is it something that we would be embarrassed about them hearing? So let's go through the definition. So again, Lashon Hara is derogatory or damaging statement about an individual. Okay? So again, it doesn't have to be speech. Any means of communicating derogatory or damaging information falls under the definition of Lashon Hara. So it could be even if you were to raise your eyebrows, right? To gesticulate, to make hand movements, or even to communicate through emails or WhatsApps or with memes and emojis or whatever, that could still be Lashon Hara. Anything that is derogatory about another person, we have to stay away from. Now, there is what's called Avak Lashon Hara. Avak Lashon Hara is literally the dust of Lashon Hara. It means there's traces of it. In other words, in situations which inevitably provoke someone to contradict the praise. So if I say about somebody, oh, they're the best speaker, or they're the most incredible person, or they're so charitable, if I do so in an excessive fashion, it is inviting others to say, actually, no, they're not, or I know X, Y, and Z about the person. So to speak, to wax lyrical about somebody, which is done in a way which is likely to invite somebody to diminish that praise and to speak in a Lashon Hara fashion, that also is something that should be avoided. Anything that leads to harm, such as recounting someone's generous character, when a listener might take advantage of the subject's goodwill, is also considered Lashon Hara because it's negative and detrimental to that person. So if you were to say, for example, oh, so Mr. Cohen is the most phenomenal host, right? Then all of a sudden, people that are there may, or is very generous, or is always giving to the youth of our community for their causes, then it may lead to that person being treated or being taken advantage of. So that's in terms of speaking Lashon Hara. Next time, we're going to go on to the idea of listening Lashon Hara. What's the problem with that? At the end of the day, I'm passive. I'm not doing anything. The other person is. And what can you do if you are caught up with listening Lashon Hara? What should you do in that situation? It's very, very difficult. So now we carry on. So, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Even when I walk in the valley of darkness, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. You anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. I apologize, I haven't said good morning to everyone in the rush to get through something. So let's say good morning in no particular order to Michelle, David, Carol, Michael, and Peter, Caroline, Estelle, Richard, Mervyn, Pal, Diana, and Richard. Good morning to everyone, as well as all those that are joining us in the various forms of communication. We'll continue now with the memorial prayer, followed by the Refuah Shlema prayer. Memorial prayer. Firstly for Rav Lord Sachs, and then everyone else. Adon Olamim Zacha is Nishmois Harav Yaakov Tzvi ben David Aryeh Leah Bas Feivel Tzivi Bas Mordechai Avram ben David Slavin Shlom ben Yisrael Morris Tzipora Fegel Bas Ruben Baruch Shalom ben Eleli ben Bas Feivel from Moshe Shanos Yaakov Shmuel Kela Bela Bas Henach Yirmiyahu Yechev ben Avim Moshe Eliezer Saramaka Bas ben Yomin, as well as the Yortzites for today. Spritzy Gittel Bas David Savid Yaakov ben Shmuel Winstock Tvora Bas Label Goldstone Zvulun ben Tzvi Elton Yaakov ben Shmuel Winstock Tzvi ben David Peretz Hana ben Bas Avram Fire Pinchas Chai ben Yehuda Cohen Sofiov Gittel Bas Yaakov Green Helena Bas Meir HaKohen Marks Zelig ben Ruben Leib Chaim Lax Loxton Shalchu Lilaman Bagan Eden Teimanu Chasam Lachem Balarachamim Yasi Rein Beseisa Kanafav Lalamim Veyitzrabas Chait Nishwasam Adonai Nachlasam Yanuchu Bishlam Mishkavam Benamar Amen. Wish long life to all those that are saying Kaddish or would be saying Kaddish today, those that have Yortzeit, those that are in their year. We conclude with the memorial prayer, with the Refuah Shlema prayer for all those that are unwell in our community and beyond. Misha Bechav Robin of Yaakov Moshe Aaron David Shlomo Yivarach Rapes Achaylim Babu Shana Mispalim Babu Ram Bischos HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Racham Aleihem Lach Manafosam Bishlach Leim Fushlim and Shemaim Lachol Ve'em Basoch Shachar Yisrael Vos Nefesh Vos Agov Hash Bagaz Makariv and Amar Amen. Good morning to everyone. So the challenge for us today is to be that tiny bit more consistent in the way that we speak, in the way that we behave, and that, especially in the area of Lashon Hara, will make incremental change and transform the way we are, the way we behave, and the lives of everyone near and far. Have a great day. Look after yourselves. We'll continue tomorrow with the idea of hearing Lashon Hara. What is the problem and how do we deal with it? Have a great day.